Well, let's get more analysis on this with Fitz-Gerald, who's the director of the Balsillie School of International Affairs. She joins us from Waterloo in Canada. Many are calling this, Anne, a hugely surprising result, given the Democratic Party's long stint in power. But given how the economic problems have been in the country, particularly that drop in demand for diamonds, were you all that surprised?
Well, we're starting to see a trend away from support for long-standing liberation movements and parties that have had a prolonged stay in power. And that demand is really being driven by a huge youth population. And demographics is something we really need to pay attention to closely, because the youth represent under the age of 30 years of age, over 56% of Botswana's population. They are globally connected with the rest of the world. They know that the world is functioning in a profoundly different way, in a way that's driven by data and digitalized processes. And it's looking for those economic reform policies that can bring progress, jobs, opportunities, as well as social justice. And, you know, the incoming president, Duma Boko, promised to create up to 500,000 new jobs in 5 years. He also, with his human rights legal background, stands for social justice, something the youth is also looking forward to. So this was the voice of the youth, the people generally, 84% voter turnout. So no, increasingly after we saw what happened in South Africa with the ANC's 30-year rule coming to an end recently, I think this is a trend that we'll see more of across the continent.
You mentioned Masisi's successor there and some of his promises. Can you tell us a little bit more about him and how exactly he plans to deliver on these quite ambitious targets?
Well, I think the population has seen the incoming president be part of opposition politics for a long time. And, you know, weighed against a party that has been in power for almost 6 decades, you do easily reach the conclusion that there's only so much creativity, a long-standing party coming from distinct ideological roots that have been shaped and informed by liberation movements can bring in this day and age. So, you know, one thing for sure with Botswana is economic diversification is important. It has had a thriving diamond industry and diamond trade in the past, and a thriving tourist industry, but more is needed. Botswana is a landlocked country, and it has to be creative and add value to the global marketplace based on partnerships with others. It has to stand behind innovation and support a marketplace of ideas. And therefore, the education system becomes very important in the country, and progressing that education system to support what is needed to have a policy orientation that's fit for purpose in a very intangibles world. So the incoming president has a very demanding agenda in front of him. He will have to perform against what he has promised, because he has a very interested and engaged population ready for change.
Potentially exciting times then ahead for this very large contingent of young people in Botswana. And just as I'm speaking to you, we're seeing that Duma Boko has just been sworn in Botswana. I wanted to ask you, a lot of nations where one party has been in power for a long time sort of essentially become one-party countries. That doesn't seem to have happened in Botswana or South Africa, as you mentioned. Why do you think that is, and what can we learn about these countries, about the strength of democracy and keeping democracy vibrant?
Yeah, I think you've said exactly the answer to this question. This election experience, which countries across the developed North and the developing South should be watching and tuned into, speaks to the vitality of Botswana's democracy and Botswana's democratic processes and commitment to those democratic processes. The outgoing president, President Masisi, has behaved and conducted himself thus far in a very leader-like way. He has conceded defeat. He has congratulated the incoming party. He has acknowledged that mistakes were made and that the BDP, his party, got things badly wrong. And he has said, we are ready to retreat to the status of an opposition party. And this is, signaling some important aspects of democratic processes and respect to democratic institutions at a time when the rest of the world is experiencing turmoil and complexity and threats to our democratic institution. So I think we can learn a lot from this experience, and I think it's great that media organizations like TRT are giving it such good coverage.
Well, thank you so much, Anne, and thank you so much for joining us on the NewsHour today.
Pleasure.